How's it going, everyone? Marriland here, and this is Marriland's Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon Pokémon Review series, which ties into my Ultra Moon walkthrough series. Although, don't worry, both the review and the walkthrough series apply for Pokémon Ultra Sun as well. This video goes over the various Pokémon and their evolutions that can be found in the listed area that also haven't been covered in a previous video. You can use the timestamps in the description to jump directly to the review that you want to hear. The reviews up ahead are for in-game purposes only and are not geared towards player versus player fights or post-game stuff. The stats you see listed are the Pokemon's base stats, not actual stats, and are the base of calculating stats at any level. Anyway, on with the reviews. Ekans and Arbok, two classic poison-type snakes, are now in the Alola region thanks to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But really, there's not much to be thankful for. They're okay. Not great, but okay. Ekans evolves into Arbok at level 22, which isn't too bad at least. The problem is, neither have overly good stats. Ekans has passable attack, special defense, and speed, but everything else isn't so good. Arbok is a lot of the same, with nice attack, but that's about it as far as usefulness goes. The rest of its stats are mostly mediocre, although at least its speed isn't terrible. They'll have either Intimidate or Shed Skin for their main abilities, and Intimidate is probably your best bet for them, because they'll give them a better chance at taking hits. Move-wise, you need to understand that the garbage Poison Sting is the only physical-based Poison-type move they can learn until level 63 as an Arbok! Yeah, and it's not even worth keeping, to be honest. Bite at level 9 is alright, Glare at level 12 is a good 100% accurate paralysis move, and then it gets crunched to replace Bite when it evolves into Arbok. As Arbok, Stockpile seems kinda neat by allowing it to raise its defense and special defense, although Spit Up and Swallow aren't really worth it. Acid Spray at level 32 can work out alright by lowering the foe's special defense by 2 stages, but unlike Grimer, it gets it too late to be that useful. Coil all the way at level 56 is nice, raising attack, defense, and accuracy by a stage, and you can also learn Ice Fang, Thunder Fang, and Fire Fang by spending a heart scale at the end of the game, but then again, with just 65 power, it's not going to hit anything too hard. TMs and tutor moves don't really make it much better, although getting Giga Drain from an early tutor is pretty nice, despite having low special attack. Rock Tomb, Bulldoze, and Return are rather basic options, while Seed Bomb, Iron Tail, and Aqua Tail from the move tutor on the 3rd island are also pretty decent for coverage. Finally, it gets Poison Jab from a TM at the very end of the game. That's unfortunate. Really, Ekans and Arbok aren't worthwhile to use. They have underwhelming stats, lack good poison-type moves, and don't have anything that makes them remarkable. Muck and Crobat are better options, though even Pokemon like Gengar, Tentacruel, and Toxapex serve that poison-type role quite well. Makuhita and Hariyama are two fighting-type Pokemon originally hailing from the Hoenn region, but they've set up shop in Alola, even in the original Sun and Moon. Makuhita evolves into Hariyama at level 24, which is pretty good. For their standard abilities, they have either Thick Fat, which reduces the fire and ice-type damage they take by half, or Guts, which boosts the power of their physical moves by 50% when they're affected by a major status condition. Plus, they don't lose attack while burned. Guts is probably better, but either ability is good. Plus, if you invest the time in getting its hidden ability, which I won't be explaining how to do here, sorry, Sheer Force is also a very nice option. Stat-wise, Makuhita has a good amount of hit points and attack, but miserable other stats. At least that's all it really needs, though that stretch from the start of the 2nd island until level 24 will be a bit painful. Once it evolves, it gets an absolute ton of hit points and a huge amount of attack, and then the rest of its stats are pretty below average. However, while its defenses are a bit low, the sheer magnitude of Hariyama's hit points more than makes up for that, so it can take hits quite well. The main downside to Hariyama's stats is its low speed, and even then, there are a lot worse Pokemon out there. Makuhita's starting moves aren't overly interesting, although Focus Energy raises Makuhita's critical hit chance by 2 stages, effectively giving it a 50% chance to score a crit. Fake Out at level 10 is a pretty good move for Makuhita, and even Hariyama later on, because it gives them a free hit on the foe, causing them to flinch, but it can only be used on the first turn it's been sent out. With Makuhita and Hariyama's high attack and low speed, it's actually pretty helpful. Knockoff, a Dark-type move learned at level 19, it hits for 65 power from the get-go, but it also removes the foe's held item, and if it does 50% more damage for that hit. Since every totem Pokemon has a held item, it's good for those fights, plus it also removes their helpful item. After evolving, it gets Belly Drum at level 26, which is very risky, but can work out fairly well if you cultivate and give Hariyama citrus berries. Belly Drum maxes out Hariyama's attack all the way up to +6, but cuts its hit points in half. It's very dangerous, especially with Hariyama's low speed, but it gives Hariyama the capability to do an incredible amount of damage to just about anything if you can pull it off. I don't recommend going that route unless you're feeling dangerous. At level 46, it gets Close Combat, which is a very powerful fighting type move, but it lowers its defense and special defense afterwards. It's still really good on Hariyama though. Lastly, Heavy Slam is a solid steel type move that it gets at level 54, and since Hariyama is pretty darn heavy, it should do a lot of damage. Although, since fighting type moves are already good against both rock and ice, it may not be smart using Hariyama to counter a fairy type. Makuhita and Hariyama get a whole bunch of helpful TM and move tutor moves. The powerful Brick Break is available during the very first trial, and it should stick with Makuhita and Hariyama for probably the rest of the game. It'll completely wreck the first trial, too. It gets Fire Punch early on as well, after clearing the first island. Rock Tomb and Bulldoze are good options that also lower the foe's speed, which may give Makuhita or Hariyama a chance to strike first, although don't count on it. Low Sweep can also be considered over Bulldoze if you don't mind having two fighting type moves, since it lowers the foe's speed as well. That speed decrease can sometimes make the difference over Brick Break. On the third island, Facade can work splendidly with Guts, and you can even get a Flame Orb later on in the island to easily give it burn status. It gets access to both Thunder Punch and Ice Punch as tutor moves on the third island as well, which is awesome, as both of these give Hariyama a great amount of flexibility. It also gets Rock Slide, Stone Edge, and Poison Jab later on in the game, as well as Bulk Up in case you want to beef up Hariyama's attack and defense. Overall, Makuhita and Hariyama are pretty good. Hawlucha, the fighting bird just around the corner, has the speed that Hariyama lacks, but lacks some of the survivability that Hariyama has, and also doesn't get access to Ice Punch. Machamp is also a very similar option, with even better attack and a pinch better speed. There's also plenty of other fun fighting types that can be used instead for different purposes. Hariyama is still worth considering though, and can make a good addition to the team once it gets going. You're getting sleepy, very sleepy. Nah, you're not. What am I talking about? But this review of Drowzee and Hypno may make you a bit tired. Drowzee and its evolution, Hypno, are both Psychic-type Pokemon. Drowzee evolves into Hypno at level 26, which isn't too bad, but it isn't great either. Their standard abilities are Insomnia, which prevents them from falling asleep, or Forewarn, which warns you of the opponent's highest power move, which can sometimes be useful, but usually just wastes time. Drowzee has very high special defense for the point in the game that you get it at, which would be great if that mattered against any of the early Totems or Kahunas, but combined with its type, it doesn't really matter that much. Other than some moderate hit points, it's got some low stats. Not terrible, but pretty low all across the board. As a Hypno, it grows its special defense even further and has some okay hit points, but everything else is very mediocre. Its base attack and special attack are equal, a rarity for Psychic-type Pokemon, so physical moves are usually just as fine with it as special moves. The problem is, both of these stats really aren't very good, so you'll be doing a lot less damage compared to other options. As for moves, thankfully it has Hypnosis to set it apart from the other early Psychic types, well, at least in the early levels, as Inkay also gets Hypnosis but at level 18. Other than that, you're dealing with a lot of uninteresting cookie-cutter moves for pretty much its entire lifespan. Psybeam at level 25 seems so distant. Nasty Plot at level 53 as a Hypno is an eternity away. And other than Zen Headbutt at level 41, that's really it for anything interesting. It has a bit better success with TMs and move tutor moves at least. Brick Break is nice, as is Thief, Signal Beam, and Fire Punch early on. Reflect and Light Scream help keep it and its team around longer. Psychic after clearing the second island is a must-have for it, while Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, and Shadow Ball are all worth considering on the third island as well. Calm Mind can boost its special attack and special defense, which is great if you're coming up against something using special moves against you. Lastly, Dazzling Gleam near the end is nice to have. But the thing is, there's really no compelling reason to use Drowzee when you get it. You just got done running into 4 Psychic types, one of which, Abra, evolving into a top-tier choice. Mr. Mime is a lot like Hypno, minus the hypnosis part, except Mr. Mime is actually reasonably fast and not weak to dark. And even then, Mr. Mime gets outclassed by the likes of Alakazam and Espeon. Drowzee just isn't worth recommending over these other choices. Smeargle is really bad in-game and don't use it. There, review over, done. Okay, I'll elaborate a little bit at least. Smeargle is a normal type. For its ability, it has either Own Tempo, which prevents confusion, or Technician, the better of the two, which raises the power of its moves with 60 or less power by 50%. It also has the hidden ability Moody, which is pretty gimmicky. Its stats are absolutely miserable. Its offensive capabilities are almost non-existent, despite what Alima's Smeargle may have led you to believe. Its defenses are very poor. Its speed is decent, but that's really it. Smeargle learns just one move, but it learns it 10 times. At level 1, level 11, 21, 31, and so on, every 10 levels. What's that move? It's Sketch. And yes, it's pretty sketchy. When Sketch is used, it permanently copies the last move that the target used. Permanently. So, theoretically, Smeargle can learn any 4 moves in the game. Don't get me wrong, that has an incredible amount of use as a utility after beating the game or in competitive battles, but it is so unbelievably worthless for playing through the game, especially because the move reminder isn't available until the very end of the game. That means that you're going to be restricted to one move that you have to carefully set up every 10 levels. That's it. Have fun using only 2 moves on all of the first island, only 3 moves for all of the second island, and so on. Also, on top of that, if you try to catch a Smeargle, you darn well better either use the move you want it to know that, another Pokemon on your team already knows, or you'd better hope that it won't knock itself out with Struggle if you use an item or switch so Sketch will fail, which is the only way you can get Smeargle to have Sketch when you catch it. It's an absolutely terrible Pokemon to use throughout your journey. It's pretty nice once you've beaten the game. You have access to the move reminder to reteach Sketch at your leisure, and can load Smeargle with a bunch of helpful status moves like Spore or whatever else you need. But that's way into the future, not now. I guess since you're here, I should tell you a trick that you can use to get Smeargle to learn moves that you want it to learn. After clearing your first trial, you can engage in SOS battles with wild Pokemon, and you can do this easier by using Adrenaline Orbs. What you want to do is find a wild Smeargle, use an Adrenaline Orb, and then keep using the Adrenaline Orb while Smeargle uses Struggle until another Smeargle joins the battle. Then, target the struggling Smeargle with the move you wish to copy, and the second Smeargle should successfully sketch that move. The fate of the first Smeargle is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. Send out your Smeargle and then use Sketch on the second Smeargle to copy the move that your Pokemon used against the first one. There's also a double battle you can fight once per day after beating the game against 2 trainers in the Game Freak building in Heya City, which you can use to set up Sketch as well. But unfortunately, there aren't any other repeatable double battles like in older games, at least as far as I know. So it's pretty much either that double battle or SOS battles. Dunsparce is a bit of an odd Pokemon, to say the least. It's a normal type Pokemon that doesn't evolve, sort of like Furfrou from the previous area. It has 2 main abilities, Runaway, which is awful and only allows you to run from wild Pokemon, or Serene Grace, which is the only ability that should be considered for Dunsparce. Serene Grace doubles the chance of any added effects of moves happening. So moves with a 30% chance of, say, causing the foe to flinch are now increased to a 60% chance. That can be pretty helpful in a lot of instances. Stat-wise, Dunsparce has a lot of hit points, low speed, and then average everything else. At least its hit points combined with average defenses mean it can take hits pretty well. Dunsparce isn't really meant for raw offense though, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now for its moves. Defense Curl coupled with Rollout can be a fun combo for early game, since Defense Curl doubles the power of Rollout if you use Rollout after using Defense Curl. It's a bit risky and not helpful against Totem Pokemon, but still pretty fun. Yawn at level 16 is a nice utility move for putting the foe to sleep. At level 18, it gets another potentially fun move, Ancient Power, which normally has a 10% chance to raise all of Dunsparce's stats, but it becomes a 20% chance with Serene Grace. The problem is that it's still pretty unreliable, but it can be great when it does activate. Body Slam at level 21, though, is a great move for Dunsparce. 80 power plus a base 30% chance of paralysis, getting boosted to a 60% chance with Serene Grace. Dunsparce can usually outspeed paralyzed Pokemon, too. At level 23, it gets Drill Run, a pretty strong ground-type move with a high chance of a critical hit. It's not too shabby, really. Coil at level 31 is an interesting option for Dunsparce, raising its attack, defense, and accuracy by 1 stage, which can be a nice way to help boost its offense, but also accuracy for some of its more inaccurate moves. Glare at level 36 is an automatic paralysis, but you're usually better off hoping to get it from the 60% chance with Body Slam. Double Edge at level 38 hits hard, but has hefty recoil damage. Air Slash at level 43 is an interesting flying type option, especially combined with paralyzing the foe, because it has a base 30% chance of making the foe flinch, up to a 60% chance with a boost. So between the paralysis and the flinch chance, that's pretty decent. Although, Rock Slide's usually a better option due to Dunsparce's slightly higher attack and its higher power. Lastly, Dragon Rush at level 46 is powerful, but inaccurate, although that can be remedied with Coil. For TM and Tutor moves, Dunsparce has plenty of options. Early on, Thief and Shockwave give you some type coverage, but Water Pulse is particularly good with Serene Grace, giving you a respectable 40% chance of confusing the foe thanks to Serene Grace. Charge Beam gives you an automatic special attack boost if you want to go that route, while Rock Tomb and Bulldoze both give coverage and drop the foe's speed. Later on, Zen Headbutt is decent for not just a Psychic-type move for Dunsparce, but also another chance of making the foe flinch with a 20% base chance or 40% with Serene Grace, while Aqua Tail is just good Water-type damage. Shadow Ball can be helpful against the 6th Totem, but Rock Slide on the end of the 3rd island is one of the best moves for Dunsparce, since it has nice power and also an effective 60% chance of making the foe flinch. You just have to remember that you have to outspeed a foe to make it flinch, so paralyzing it or dropping its speed is important. Lastly, despite being special based, Serene Grace gives Flamethrower, Fire Blast, and Ice Beam increased chances of burning, or, better yet, freezing the foe, so they can also be considered. The problem with Dunsparce is that its stats aren't anything to sing home about, but at least it has a wide variety of different strategies to try out. You can go with a Paraflinch set, such as Body Slam, Rock Slide, Air Slash, and Zen Headbutt. You can go with a Parafusion set with Body Slam, Water Pulse, Rock Slide, and any other move of your choice. You could go with a Coil set with Dragon Rush, Rock Slide, Body Slam, and of course Coil. Or you could go with another set taking advantage of Dunsparce's abilities. Heck, it's obscure, but Rest, Snore, and Body Slam may work, since Snore has a base 30% chance of making the foe flinch as well. You also have the problem of having to set things up with Dunsparce as well as rely on luck. Whereas you could use a more direct normal type Pokemon to just tear down the opponent with brute force, which, mind you, is usually sufficient in most fights in the game. Spearow and its evolution Fearow are 2 more normal flying type Pokemon, and neither really have much exciting going on for them. Spearow evolves into Fearow at level 20. Spearow's attack and speed are both okay, and Fearow increases those stats further. Unfortunately, even as a Fearow, its attack and speed aren't excellent, just reasonable. The rest of its stats are just pretty mediocre. On top of that, its ability isn't really anything great either. As for moves, it starts with Peck, which is handy, gets Pursuit at level 8 for some Dark-type coverage, but then gets Aerial Ace at level 15, which is rather nice, and will do well against the first Kahuna. That's really it, until Drill Peck at level 41 is a Fearow, which is an awesome flying-type move for it. And then, perhaps the only thing that gives Fearow something interesting, Drill Run at level 45 is a ground-type move that hits pretty hard and also has a higher chance of scoring a critical hit. It learns no good tutor moves before beating the game, other than potentially Tailwind, and its TM selection isn't all that great either. Thief is a good upgrade to Pursuit. Steel Wing and Fly are options for later, as is U-Turn, and then, well, you could always use it for False Swipe. Really, I hate to say it, but there's not any reason to use Spearow or Fearow. Pick-a-Peck is way better. So is something like Crobat or Ikorio, and especially the likes of Hawlucha, or pretty much anything part flying. I don't recommend Spearow. Cutiefly is exactly as its name suggests, a cute little fly thing. It's a fairy bug-type Pokemon, and it evolves into the even cuter Ribombee at level 25. They can have either the useless Honey Gather ability, which just gives you encounter-inducing honey after every few battles, or it could have Shield Dust instead, which prevents added effects of moves targeting Cutiefly or Ribombee from happening. So if something has, say, a 20% chance of paralyzing you, it'll never happen. It's quite handy, even if you won't notice it. Stat-wise, Cutiefly is pretty bad. It's flimsy and only has good speed going for it. Ribombee is thankfully a bit better. It's very fast, and also has some really decent special attack, but the rest of its stats are pretty underwhelming. It starts off with Absorb and Fairy Wind, the first of which won't really hit that hard, but Fairy Wind is at least a usable Fairy-type move early on. Very helpful against all those Dark types. Stun Spore at level 7 is alright for paralyzing foes, but it's not necessary later on. Struggle Bug at level 10 is great for Cutiefly, being its first Bug-type move, and a decent one at that. It lowers the foe's special attack as well. Silver Wind at level 13 is a possibility, with even more power than Struggle Bug and a rare 10% chance of raising all of its stats by one stage. But the downside is, it has only 5 PP, so realistically, I don't recommend it. It gets Draining Kiss at level 16, which is a very nice Fairy-type move that heals 75% of the damage dealt, and is a great way to give Cutiefly some extra survivability. Definitely replace Fairy Wind with that. When it evolves, it gets its signature move, Pollen Puff, a strong 90 power Bug-type move that you can also use in a double battle to heal your ally instead. However, it gets Bug Buzz, the ultimate special-based Bug-type move, at level 28 as a Ribombee. Pollen Puff has 15 PP compared to Bug Buzz's 10. Both have the same power, but Bug Buzz also has a 10% chance of lowering the target's special defense. Pollen Puff is great for double battles, but there aren't too many of those in the game. Either way, both are great moves to learn early on. It also gets Dazzling Gleam, an excellent Fairy-type move at level 35. Lastly, at level 49, it gets Quiver Dance, an insanely good move that raises its special attack, special defense, and speed stats by one stage, which is excellent since all of those stats are already pretty decent. As for TM and tutor moves, Signal Beam from the early tutors is a great choice to replace either Struggle Bug or Silver Wind. Light Screen and Reflect are also alright options for supporting your team. It'll be a while, but shortly after clearing the second island, getting access to Psychic can be rather nice. Lastly, Energy Ball is another option for extra coverage late in the game, but you'll probably have other things you'll need your move slots for. Overall, Cutiefly and Ribombee are pretty good, with access to some excellent moves for their two types, but they are rather flimsy. Butterfree is another Bug-type option early on that is also great for putting foes to sleep, but Ribombee will probably be better in the long run. There's also Vikavolt for a strong special-based bug, but it's hideously slow. For Fairy types, Florges and Sylveon are also very good Fairy types, and Whimsicott in Ultra Sun is also a decent choice, but has less oomph. Although those are the alternatives, Ribombee is more than competitive against any of them, so long as you can endure its slower defenses. So, Cutiefly is a pretty good choice. Growlithe and its legendary evolution, Arcanine, are both Fire-type dog Pokemon that have been around for a while. Growlithe evolves into Arcanine by using a Firestone on it, which is available on the second island. However, when you use the Firestone on Growlithe is really important because Arcanine learns only one new move by level up, and misses out on a ton of excellent moves that only Growlithe picks up. That's part of what makes using a Growlithe and Arcanine rather difficult, deciding whether to go for the power of evolution at the cost of worse moves, or put up with a lackluster Pokemon for a large portion of the game in order to get some very good moves. For abilities, its standard abilities are either Intimidate, which lowers the foe's attack whenever you send out Growlithe or Arcanine in battle, or Flash Fire, which absorbs Fire-type moves and raises the power of Growlithe or Arcanine's Fire-type moves if it's hit by one. Intimidate is probably better, but Flash Fire is also fine, and can work out nicely if you have 2 or more Pokemon on your team weak to fire. Stat-wise, Growlithe is pretty ample for the first island, and a chunk of the second island, with good attack and special attack, but as an Arcanine, it has extremely good stats all across the board, with emphasis on attack and special attack. It's quite fast and has a great spread of hit points and defenses. Okay, let's talk about moves, but also reiterate the fact that all level up moves listed are for Growlithe only, unless otherwise specified. Of course, you'll retain those moves as an Arcanine, but once you evolve, you won't be able to learn most of them, which is why deciding when to evolve is very important. Anyway, Growlithe starts off with Bite and Ember, both of which are decent for it. It gets Flame Wheel at level 17, which is a definite upgrade to Ember. Fire Fang at level 21 is an alternative to Flame Wheel, with 5 more power and a chance of causing the foe to flinch, but with 5% less accuracy. Either are fine, and which you choose depends on your own personal preference. Flame Burst is learned at level 28 and has a decent 70 power, but keep in mind, it's special based. It's also slightly before this point you'll have the Firestone, so you'll really need to start considering when to evolve. Level 34 is when it gets Flamethrower, which is likely worth waiting for, since it won't be until the near end of the game that you get the TM for it. Plus, at exactly level 34 as an Arcanine, it gets Extreme Speed, another great move for it, although Arcanine is usually fast enough. Usually. As for moves past that, Growlithe gets Crunch at level 39, Heat Wave at level 41, Outrage at level 43, and then the very powerful recoil-inducing Flare Blitz, all the way at level 45. 45 is a very long time to wait to evolve into Arcanine, though, and you'll probably be heading through the 4th island at that point. Flare Blitz is great on Arcanine, and Crunch and Outrage are also both excellent moves, but having the extra strength of Arcanine is also really helpful during those 11 or more levels. I personally like evolving Growlithe at level 34. After it gets Flamethrower, because Flamethrower is usually strong enough, and then you get to take advantage of its higher stats at a point where they're really helpful. You could also evolve at level 28 with Flame Burst, and then just get Flamethrower's TM later on. At least TM and Tutor moves can be taught at any time after you get them, whether or not you evolve it, so that's good at least. Hidden Power might work out well depending on which type you get. Flame Charge can be interesting to raise its speed, but you probably won't need it and would be better off using its other Fire-type moves. Sunny Day, though, while expensive, can also work quite well on Growlithe and Arcanine by boosting its Fire-type moves power by 50%, while also reducing Water-type damage by 50%. So you take a turn to set it up, but it pays off for the next few turns. It also combos well with Solar Beam far later in the game, too. Aerial Ace, Return, and Bulldoze are some other options for extra coverage, while Snarl can actually work quite well with Intimidate, so you can lower the target's special attack as well as its attack from Intimidate. Fire Blast is a great option, and it has enough accuracy to get by, although it may miss still. There's also Volt Charge for some solid electric-type damage at the cost of some recoil damage. Lastly, as hinted at earlier, Flamethrower is available as a TM towards the very end of the game, and that'll be great if you evolved your Growlithe early. Is it worth using Growlithe and Arcanine, though? How do they stack up against the competition? Well, the biggest problem is that darn wait until getting worthwhile moves, and then the dilemma of when to evolve. Stat-wise, Arcanine is actually the best fire type in Alola. And as far as usability goes, it's also among the top. Magmortar is another powerhouse option, and Torkoal has the useful Drought ability, but also has some bad speed. Really though, Arcanine, either with or without its top tier moves, is the leader of the pack for fire types, so I recommend it, as long as you're patient. Crabrawler is a punchy fighting type Pokemon that evolves into the unique fighting ice type Crabominable. And let me tell you, Crabominable's typing makes it quite the abomination. 6 weaknesses to rather common types is quite unfortunate. In the older games, you had to wait until the very end of the game to evolve it, as it only evolves while gaining a level in Mount Lanakila. Thankfully, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon allow you to visit an unexciting patch of grass that is technically considered part of Mount Lanakila. But you can do that as soon as you are near Mount Lanakila on the 3rd island, rather than the end of the game, so that's pretty good. Because taking up Crabrawler all the way through the game was absolutely terrible. Stat-wise, Crabrawler has some pretty good attack for early in the game, and passable defense and speed. Crabominable gets a ton of attack and hit points, okay defense, but then has miserable speed, getting much slower than its previous evolution. That low speed is also really bad given how many weaknesses Crabominable has. It has 2 normal abilities, Hyper Cutter, which prevents its attack from being lowered, and Iron Fist, which raises the power of its punching moves by 20%. Iron Fist is probably the better of the two, but not having to worry about growls or intimidates is pretty nice. For moves, it has a few options early on that are rather self-explanatory, but Power Up Punch at level 22 is pretty nice, plus you get the Iron Fist boost from that. Dizzy Punch is a weird option, but with the Iron Fist boost and the chance of confusion, it's not so bad as an option if you have Iron Fist. Here's the thing, it'll gain different moves after that depending on whether it's evolved or not. Crabrawler gets Payback at level 29, while Crabominable gets the very useful Avalanche, and since Crabominable has very low speed, Avalanche is a very good option that'll usually hit for 120 power. Payback is a solid 100 power Dark type move if you go second though. Ideally, if you evolve Crabrawler at exactly level 29, you can walk away with both moves. But since you'll probably be somewhere around level 30 to 35 by the time you can reach the foot of Mount Lanakila, you may have to put Crabrawler in the PC for a bit. Also, it's worth noting that Crabominable gets Ice Punch upon evolving, whenever that happens to be, and it's a good substitute for Avalanche, though it won't hit quite as hard. At level 39, Crabrawler gets the Water-type move Crab Hammer, while Crabominable gets its signature move Ice Hammer, a 100 power Ice-type move that lowers Crabominable's speed by 1 stage after use. Ice Hammer also gets a boost from Iron Fist, so that actually does give it equivalent power to Avalanche, but it has only 90% accuracy, so you have to watch out for that. Lastly, Crabominable gets Close Combat at level 49, which is a strong move, but one that'll leave Crabominable vulnerable by lowering its defense and special defense afterwards. For TM and tutor moves, it gets Brick Break early on and is a good user of it, so that's a must-have. Thief is also an early move that should replace Pursuit, but it isn't useful as you progress further into the 2nd island. Rock Tomb and Bulldoze are decent coverage moves, while Thunder Punch, Zen Headbutt, and Iron Head can all be taught by a move tutor on the 3rd island. Rock Slide and Stone Edge are other options towards the end of the game. Here's the thing, there are plenty of other fighting types that are almost certainly a better bet. Plus, they're not encumbered by a painful secondary type coupled with slow speed. Makuhita on this very route grows into a more standard fighting type that's pretty bulky, although it is rather slow. Hawlucha is also amazing and available on the 1st island. In fact, almost every fighting type other than Primeape is probably a better bet. And for ice types, Crabominable just has a bit too much baggage to serve it well. But hey, at least it's not quite as bad as in Sun and Moon. Alright, that's it for this Pokemon review episode. If you enjoyed it, perhaps consider hitting that like button or subscribing to the Marriland channel for more. And if you have any other cool strategies, ideas, recommended moves, or overall opinion on any of the Pokemon here. Even if you just like it for being adorable or something, feel free to leave a comment down below to get the discussion going. You can find more Pokemon reviews, as well as my Pokemon Ultra Moon walkthrough series, in the links below in the description or on this end screen. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.